Welcome to Autism Demystified. I am your host, Dr. Vladimir Barayev, and a general pediatrician specializing in autism care for children. I am joined today by the wonderful Dr. Emily Levy. Dr. Levy is the founder and director of EBL Coaching, a specialized tutoring program that offers individualized, one-on-one, home, virtual, and on-site instruction using research-based multisensory techniques. She graduated from Brown University and received her master's degree in special education from Nova University in Florida. She also completed her doctorate degree in education from Nova University. Dr. Levy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you today. I'm always energized and I always enjoy being in the presence of people who are so passionate about child development, child education, and helping the future of our society to rise up and reach new heights that have never before been seen.
Well, thank you. And I feel the same way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Dr. Levy, I will jump right into it. I would like to transport our audience and yourself into my world. But what I do is autism evaluations, and a lot of families ask me about educational approaches for their children on the spectrum. When I introduced you, one of the things that is mentioned in your biography is that you offer multisensory techniques when you approach your tutoring and education services. Could you please elaborate on that?
Absolutely. A multisensory approach to teaching means that we integrate multiple senses simultaneously, the visual, the auditory, and the tactile kinesthetic modalities when we teach children new concepts. And there's so much research behind it that tells us that using this approach really helps for new information to stick in our long-term memory. So it is something we specialize in, and it's been incredibly effective for our students.
Oh, that's wonderful. Can you give us an example of one a child that you recently worked with or a student that you recently worked with where there was a particular sensory experience that helped them to retain knowledge?
Sure. We recently had a student, and we actually have many students like this frequently, who struggled with reading comprehension and really just got lost in the passage when the student would read, had trouble focusing, had trouble processing the information. So we used a multisensory highlighting approach to help build that student's reading comprehension skills. And the way it works is that we teach students that first off, when we read, there's three elements that we should look for. The first is the topic, which is 1, 2, or 3 words describing the passage, like the beach or World War I. And we learn to highlight the topic in blue. The second element we look for is the main idea, which is what the author is saying about the topic. So let's say the topic is World War I. The main idea might be there were many causes for World War I, and we highlight the main idea in green. And then the third element we look for are the important salient details, which we highlight in yellow. So we have this 3 different color highlighting system. We teach the students to first read the passage one time without highlighting, then go back and look for these 3 elements, the topic, the main idea, and the important details. And what that helps the student do is really take them from being a passive reader where they're distracted, they're not engaging with the text, to really becoming an active reader. And that really helps the information, again, to stick in their long-term memory, and it really helps them to understand what they're reading. So that's just an example of one multisensory strategy for a student who struggled with reading comprehension.
That's incredible. I just learned something new, and a strategy that I'm going to talk to some families about if they ask me of any approaches or any ways that they can help their young readers and young learners to attack the situations. Because, you know, it's fascinating to me. You take a something like colors, the different colors of highlighting, and then searching for the connection between a color and the part of the passage that they're reading, like what's critical about that component. And it relates to me back to thinking about how children on the with neurodiverse children on the autism spectrum, when they are interacting with the world, their sense perception is known to be different
Mhm.
than children who are neurotypical. So I've seen some patients in my practice where they will come in, they like to sort things out by color. So like they'll organize all their red toys in one place and all their blue toys. I've even had one child come in that any object that's in a room, regardless of what it is, whether it's a toy or not, they will put it on the visible light spectrum. So Roy G. Biv, everything gets organized by Roy G. Biv in that room on my table. They even did it for me right in front of me without me asking them to, just while the parent was there and engaging with me. So it's amazing. The other thing, the memory that what you just said triggered in my mind was there were studies in the past that showed that neurotypical students, college students, I think they were, who were studying for an exam, if they had the smell of roses available for them while they were studying, and then the smell of roses while they were taking the exam, their retention of the information improves. So another sense of smell. There's no reason why the same shouldn't be true for a neurodiverse individual as well.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So we mentioned reading, and this is a hot button issue. Uh, a lot of families come to me and ask me about dyslexia
Mm.
and helping their young learners overcome challenges in dyslexia. How do you approach that subject with kids who are either known to have dyslexia or you suspect they have dyslexia, or does it even make a difference?
Sure. Well, students who have dyslexia, as you know, typically struggle with the mechanics of reading and writing, decoding words, reading words fluently, expressing their thoughts on paper when writing. And there's an amazing research-based method called the Orton-Gillingham method, which has been research proven as being the most effective method for helping students with dyslexia build these skills, but really just any student who struggles with reading and writing, we find really benefits from this method. And the way it works is it starts by building the foundational skills, names of the letters or corresponding sounds, how to blend those sounds together to form words. And then it very systematically moves upwards. We move into words containing blends, consonant digraphs, vowel digraphs, multisyllabic word patterns, and so on. And it's very multisensory within the context of that structure. So we use tools like magnetic tiles, colored sand, mini whiteboards, all within this framework of building these foundational skills. And we give kids lots of practice and repetition with each skill. We spiral back and we review old concepts when we introduce new concepts. So it's this very systematic approach. It does wonders. It's incredibly effective, both in terms of the research behind it and also our experience using this method. We do a lot of Orton-Gillingham work, and it's amazing the results we see with students who have dyslexia or struggle with reading and writing.
No, I never thought of it that way before, but the way that you broke it down and explained what the Orton-Gillingham method actually is and how it helps students. But to me, it sounds like it basically takes a complex task like reading and decoding and understanding words, and it breaks it down into smaller tasks and allows children to digest it at a slower pace. Is that basically how it works?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, because that's exactly what happens in kids who get behavior therapy, ABA therapy for kids on the spectrum. They have like either social skills or the ability to communicate with their parents, like to point. All the steps involved in reaching your arm out to point to something that you want, like those are all broken down and taught to kids in the same way. So I'm going to use actually that as an example for families and illustrate, like, hey, your child has difficulty reading. What's the solution to it? We break it down into smaller steps. What's one of the best ways that we break it down in small steps? The Orton-Gillingham method. Like that is.
Exactly. And it really works in a very similar way. So it's so effective.
Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, man, I'm learning so much right now. This is a great day for me. I
Great.
love to learn, by the way. I'm a lifelong student.
Love that, as am I.
So okay, so Orton-Gillingham is the most effective way to help students and learners overcome these challenges. How do parents access that type of education for their kids?
Great question. Some schools have Orton-Gillingham trained teachers or service providers within schools. So that's really step one. Most likely the child would need to have a diagnosis of a learning disability, dyslexia, in order to access those services. But sometimes there are teachers that happen to be trained in it. But first step is talk to the school, talk to the child study team, talk to their teacher to see if their child can receive Orton-Gillingham services at school. If not, then it's really comes from outside the classroom, usually in the form of one-on-one tutoring. Of course, that's something that we do. There are many others that do it as well. But so it's either the child will receive it in school or outside of the classroom.
Okay. Okay. So the parents should take that advice. This is really critical. Action steps. If you know your child is struggling with reading, and you are suspecting some reading disability, some learning disability there, whether they have or have not been diagnosed doesn't make a difference. Still reach out to your teachers, the assistant principals, school psychologists, or whoever your main point of contact is with the school, and find out if they offer those kind of services. And if not, you can continue to dig deeper into it. You may need to have another IEP meeting and bring the whole team back together. If your child's current providers are going to be part of that IEP meeting and they're aware of the learning difficulties, they can help back you up on that decision. And you just tell them, hey, like, this is the challenge. I've heard that Orton-Gillingham helps students just like my child, and on what can I do? And then may need to reach out to someone like Dr. Levy and access her services for out of school support as well.
Exactly. It's a wonderful method, and it really works.
Absolutely wonderful. That's great. That's great. Now, sometimes parents will come to me with a report. They'll get an evaluation from the school, from like a school psychologist, including reading and mathematics testing that was done at school. And they can be confused by what the information that was presented to them on those reports. How should parents know if what they're getting from their child's school is enough to help them make academic progress? Is there a specific metric they should be looking at? Is it their grades? Is it their progress over time? What is some advice that we can give to families?
Well, I think that first off, if the child has an IEP, there are typically goals that are built in. So first off, we want to see if they're meeting those goals. And are their skills progressing? Are they moving from being able to read 3-letter words to now being able to read words with different vowel patterns, multisyllabic words? Is their fluency improving? And usually a lot of those goals, those specific goals, are, like I said, built into the IEP. I think it's also really important to have regular communication with the teacher and with any other service providers to make sure that they're really seeing progress on their end. But I think really making sure they're meeting those goals and making sure that everyone on the team is seeing positive progress is really important for the trajectory of the child.
Absolutely. So going back to the IEP and reviewing those goals and making sure that the child is making progress within those goals. Now, let's shift gears and talk about strategies that that you take in your practice, and well as parents can use at home when it comes time to completing homework and having a child focus on completing their assignments at home.
Sure. I know that's a big one. Sometimes there are a lot of families that struggle with homework and getting their child to do their homework. And there are really several different strategies. Of course, a lot of this will depend on the child and what works best for them. But first off, I would say create a regular study space. And this could be a desk in the child's room. It could be a common space like the kitchen table if there are no other options, but there should be one set study space. And that study space should have all of the supplies the child may need. Pens, pencils, notebook, paper, scissors, whatever they may need should be there and should always be fully stocked so that they don't get up 400 times during the course of trying to get their homework done to look for other supplies. So that's one thing, consistent study space with all the supplies they need. They should also try to set up a consistent time for doing their homework. Some kids do best when they're still in school mode right after school and they get it over with. Others need a snack break or a physical activity break. But I always say try to maintain a consistent schedule for when the child will do their homework. I think that's really an important one also. And then the other one, and there are many others, but one other one that I'll share is if a child struggles to stay focused to complete their assignments, there are techniques like setting a timer for, say, 25 minutes and say, you're going to work for 25 minutes and then you're going to get a 5-minute break. And then you're going to work for another 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break. And usually after maybe 3 of those cycles, they'll get a longer break, like a 30-minute break. If that's too long and the child can only focus for 15 minutes and then they need a 5-minute break, that's okay too. But building in these structured breaks helps them to stay focused for longer stretches of time. So I would say these are all some ideas that can really help a child when it comes to homework time.
So it's the environmental control, making sure it's a space where they don't need to go back and forth to get all their supplies, as well as having the time that they're spending on their work, structured time. So it's like block of time, work, break. So they know what to expect and not really surprised by anything there.
Yeah.
Those are excellent recommendations.
Thank you.
I love that. I think that families will find that very helpful to help them with their challenges in school. How do parents know when it's time to seek support from like an outside tutoring service for their child?
Sure. Well, I would say first off, I always say a parent knows their child best, and they know when their child is struggling. If they really are having difficulty getting through their homework, they're having trouble reading basic words or having trouble learning how to write. If they're noticing these struggles, they can start by talking to their child's teacher and see what they're noticing in the classroom if they're seeing these struggles. But ultimately, I believe that tutoring is really like giving your child a gift. If they're struggling, you see them struggling, it can only help them. And I always like to say, give it a positive spin. Just like when you play soccer, you have a soccer coach. This is like having a learning or a reading coach just to help make you that much better at what you do. And we always take a very positive approach with our kids, a lot of positive reinforcement. We like to make them feel good about themselves. There's nothing wrong with them for needing a tutor. We all have strengths and weaknesses. So I believe if a parent is seeing their child struggling, seek support, it can only help them.
Is there a minimum time of tutoring, hours per week or sessions per week that students will need, or will it vary a lot based on their needs?
It really varies a lot based on their needs. If a child has, for instance, severe dyslexia versus someone who has mild dyslexia or mild reading challenge, there'd be a big difference in terms of what we recommend for frequency. So it really varies. Usually I would say minimum of 1 hour once a week. Usually twice a week is better, but that's the absolute minimum, is at least having the consistency of weekly sessions.
And can you tell me a little bit about the intake process? Like when a family contacts you and they want to begin with tutoring, do you have it like an initial assessment with the child?
Yeah, so usually I'll speak to the family on the phone first, learn more about the child. If they have any evaluations that have been done or IEPs, I usually like to read those as well. And then usually I'll do an assessment from there just to gauge their academic skills and really try to determine who the best tutor would be for them, which methods might be best, and then we would set up the process from there.
Okay. In your experience, is there a most common frequency based on a child's schedule and parents' schedules? I know things can be very hectic, but do the majority of your clients fall into like a once or twice a week type of frequency?
Again, there's a lot of variety based on the needs, but I would say the average is probably twice per week, 1 hour sessions. But again, sometimes a lot more, sometimes less, but I would say that's probably the average.
Okay, absolutely. How can parents contact you and learn more about all of the wonderful work and support that you're providing to students?
Well, the best way would be through our website, eblcoaching.com. There's lots of information about what we do, articles I've written, podcasts, lots of information for parents, but that's really the best place is our website.
So you heard it here, guys, eblcoaching.com. I will make sure to post that link into the show notes for this episode. So remember, families, Dr. Levy is available to help and support your children grow and thrive academically. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Levy. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Pleasure speaking to you as well, and thank you for having me.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So thank you to our viewers for today. That is the end for us. Parents, remember, if you are a family in New York State that is struggling to find support for your child on the autism spectrum, then call my office at 917-819-5056 for your customized developmental plan. Our phone lines are available 24 hours a day. You can leave messages for our staff. Thank you to everyone, and thank you again, Dr. Levy.